Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran and I'm very excited about some of the class changes happening in patch 8.1. With that being said, right now for World of Warcraft there is currently an extra experience buff for the anniversary. Happy birthday to World of Warcraft, it is their 14th year anniversary, so because of the occasion the developers given every player and every character an item that boosts your experience gain as long as you use it by 14%. I think this makes for a perfect time to level some classes, especially those that you're excited once patch 8.1 drops. I guess I would describe myself a little bit of an ultaholic. I play this game regularly, so for me to be playing one class all the time, sometimes I need a break from my favorites. I love exploring how certain classes and even certain particular specs play. I like learning their mechanics, figuring out their kinks, their strengths, the weaknesses, and maybe I might be able to take away a few things into PvP. And with patch 8.1, we're going to be getting some great, much needed class changes, mostly for those classes that feel like they've been kind of undervalued. There were a few classes I was super excited for Battle for Azeroth at first, but after checking out the beta, I just didn't really get that good of a feeling. There were a few classes I wasn't really impressed with, and patch 8.1 is going to try to right all those wrongs. So in this video, I kind of just want to share with you guys my thoughts on which classes I'm actually super excited about in patch 8.1 and as to why. In hopes that this video will inspire you guys to maybe check those characters out, and it might inspire for you to start leveling some characters in preparation to the next patch. So without further ado, let's go over the classes I'm actually excited about in patch 8.1 and the reason as to why. The first class on the list has to be Elemental Shaman. One of the things I'm super excited about them is they're transitioning a lot of the power play in terms of your baseline abilities. Instead of having to, save up for a big Earth Shock to finally do some damage, they're bringing it back into Lightning Bolts. I never liked having to save up for a big Earth Shock to have such massive amounts of damage towards like the delay of your rotation. It made the rest of the ramp up feel a little bit grindy and not all that fun. I'm also a huge fan of some of the Elemental Shaman talent changes. I mean, they're making a lot of these talents that were generally not picked a lot more powerful and preferable. Even enhancement shamans are getting talent adjustments. They're nerfing some, buffing some, not really changing the class, but they're trying to give players a lot more options in terms of how you can play. Honestly, after watching the trailer with Old Soldier and seeing Zappy Boy for the first time, I feel like everybody wanted to make a shaman at the time. But if you were to look at where they're at on damage, unless you primarily PvP, I think Shamans kind of disappointed me in DPS. They're kind of an underdog and very underrepresented, and they don't really reflect exactly how Blizzard describes them, which is this powerful caster that's very immobile. Instead, you don't really feel powerful until towards the late stages of your game, where you can smack a bunch of Earth Shocks at the enemy. So I feel like the patch 8.1, especially for LA Shamans, is transforming them in ways where it's actually kind of fun and exciting to play. I've been having a blast with mine, especially for AoE damage, and I can only imagine how much better single target and AoE both are going to get after patch 8.1 hits. Marksman Hunter has been that spec of Hunter that I've always wanted to make work. I mean, Blizzard was combining this kind of rapid fire / sniper from a distance class, but it just never really worked. I feel like fundamentally Marksman Hunter has been broken from the get-go. A lot of people regarded it as one of the better and even more fun specs back in Legion. Even though I didn't enjoy the vulnerability windows mechanics, a lot more people did. And I was hoping that with the changes in BFA, removing vulnerability window would make the spec feel a lot better. While the spec does look like it gives player more control, it's just in the damage aspects and how abilities combo together, that is where it just doesn't make sense. Like, to be honest with you, the best playstyle of Marksman Hunter is one where you literally use 2, if not 3 buttons. It's a lot of steady shots and aim shots. You actually ignore certain abilities. It's a little bit busted, but that 2-button build for Marksman Hunter actually puts out more damage than the way the developers intended the spec to play, which I feel like is just obvious that there's something fundamentally wrong with the spec. So I'm certainly happy that Blizzard is addressing a lot of the changes in 8.1 by making a lot more abilities like rapid fire and aim shot and how they play together as part of the playstyle of the spec a lot more valuable rather than being able to weigh one ability against the other. I guess the spec has always felt a little bit awkward, and what I imagined it to be and how it came out to be in terms of functionality, it just did not work. The AoE feels a little bit clunky, the single target damage with a 2-button build feels way too strong, and there's definitely that middle ground that's missing between strong single target and decent AoE. Overall, I'm glad Blizzard took a second look at Marksman Hunters. I'm very much hoping the new traits as well will help to contribute and make the spec feel a lot better and more pleasant to play. Windwalker Monk is another class that has been on my radar. Honestly, I don't really play Windwalker and haven't really played Windwalker since Legion. But it's always one of those fun mobile classes that a lot of people consider, usually between Demon Hunters, Pharaohs, Rogues, and Monks. I still remember Monks dominating PvP, especially in duels, back in Legion, so I have a little bit of personal animosity because I remember trying to duel him as my Outlaw Rogue and losing horribly every single time. As of recent though, as we continue our 5v5-1v1 dueling series, I kinda just feel bad for Windwalker Monks, because it definitely feels like Blizzard completely undervalued the spec. Don't get me wrong, it must be pretty fun to play, but I feel like it just relies on too many abilities for majority of your damage. For raids and dungeons, this spec is so heavily centered around getting that perfect touch of death, and the rest of your abilities just feel kind of meaningless as they don't really amp up a lot of your DPS. Getting off that perfect touch of death or a bad touch of death is going to dictate how the rest of the dungeon is going to go. Because you're so damage heavy up front, I just don't really like that idea. Just being able to spend all of your bursts in the opener and then all of your other abilities being so much more meaningless afterwards. Also, I guess I'm not a huge fan of the karma mechanic, how monks just kind of have to force themselves into a bad puddle like in raids in order to let the karma do so much of their damage. I mean, it's effective and I guess it's unique, but it takes away defensives out of the class's utility completely. And it makes the spec feel like it's heavily centered around karma damage and touch of death, where you have all your punches and kicks and fist flips and all these other abilities that can play into your playstyle but simply don't deal enough damage. Blizzard is taking steps to adjust the spec, and I'm really hoping they start to feel and to function a lot better, particularly in PvP. While I do have a personal animosity against monks and duels, they're still super fun to watch a really good one kick some ass. Another class I'm super excited about is Shadow Priest. Like, I was actually so interested in what they were going to do because the spec felt so good around the artifact weapon back in Legion. But just like the Elemental Shaman, honestly, I didn't really feel all that connected with the brand new Shadow Priest. I felt that without the artifact weapon, just a portion of what they were like back in Legion was simply gone. And I didn't feel like the spec was all that much better. I guess there was a little bit of awkwardness between Shadow Form and Void Form, and how impactful Void Form is, going from just the most important mechanic in Legion to like a thing you just kind of enter once in a blue moon but don't really worry too much about it in BFA. Blizzard is giving Shadow Priest a little bit more justice when it comes to the depth of playstyle. I picked up Shadow Priest back in Warlords of Draenor when I was just trying to find a fun ult to mess around with, and I feel like I've been playing Shadow Priest since, and it's been one of those ults that I've always been kind of a fallback on, and BFA at the beginning has been the first expansion where my Shadow Priest was the last class I probably would want to level. But with the changes Blizzard is making to Shadow Priest in regards to Void Form and in regards to abilities that you would only use in Void Form, I'm actually really digging a lot of these changes. My favorite part though is the fact that they're trying to make Surrender to Madness a lot more impactful and a lot more exciting to play. I always loved the idea of Surrender to Madness, an ability that lets you use intense amounts of power and then sacrifice your character towards the end. While the ability doesn't sacrifice your character anymore, I love the idea that they're trying to turn it into a massive burst cooldown for Shadow Priests. I'm actually very excited to see what kind of damage the best of the best Shadow players can put out, and I want to see Shadow Priest honestly become a lot more viable, not just in pure single target situations but in most PvE situations. I love the idea of players being able to break barriers, and I love what Legion offered for a lot of Shadow Priest players. It honestly got me inspired to pick one up right away. I guess it's a good idea that Blizzard is trying to bring back that potential to those same players yet again. It's something that a lot of us can play around with. Something about Shadow Priest, the mixture of dots, channel spells, and mind blast just honestly stuck with me. I like that playstyle. I just feel like it was kind of awkward in BFA. But with these changes in patch 8.1, I'm definitely going to be leveling my Shadow Priest. probably as a disc priest to begin with, but eventually I'll be making my swap to shadow priest once patch 8.1 starts. The last class I want to talk about is mostly druids. I know that feral hasn't been the best spec in the game. Actually, you don't really see a lot of ferals, unless you PvP, where they're actually incredible. But what I found sad about feral druids is they're just not that wanted. It is that one spec where literally the word feels feral man came from. They're kind of in this awkward spot where they're not quite as good as rogues for Mythic Plus dungeons or raids. They don't have nearly the same survivability. They're not quite as versatile as an assassination rogues with the dots and bursty playstyle. At the same time, they're not quite as good as a boomkin in Mythic Plus dungeons, where boomkin brings a lot of utility and great damage on demand, primarily AoE damage, but can also do a single target. Feral kind of just, it's like a worse version of rogue, I guess. Or at least kind of that's the feeling that I'm getting. Honestly, I believe feral is in for a huge overhaul coming in the next few patches. Or at least I'm thinking maybe that's something what Blizzard would do. But as of patch 8.1, they are expanding on their AoE and dot-based playstyle, which is something I'm very interested in. It's a very unique class that uses dots as a melee, and I would love to see Blizzard play a lot more with bleeds, a lot similar to how Affliction Warlocks play with a very dot-centric playstyle. Just apply that dot-centric playstyle of Affliction towards the melee feral druid, and maybe give it a little bit extra range. I feel like honestly it could be very unique and interesting to play. Like imagine a feral, instead of being a class that's all about trying to get the biggest bites and shreds on the enemy, it's all about maintaining damage and maintaining dots on every single enemy. Honestly, I feel like it can have such a fun potential to it, but I guess we'll see what the spec will have in the future. As of ferals in 8.1, I'm actually super excited. And a bonus class for all of you guys, because I'm a rogue main, I really do think you guys should consider leveling a rogue. As of Battle for Azeroth, it has definitely been an expansion where we have been doing exceptionally well. As a rogue, you get invited into a lot of the in-game content pretty often just because you're a rogue. In Mythic Plus, rogues provide extra utility, great damage, and perfect survivability for majority of the situations, as well as a shroud of concealment, allowing you to skip certain packs of mobs and share your stealth benefits with the group. In raids, rogues are survivalists, and we end up pumping a lot of damage, whether we play Subtlety, Assassination, or Outlaw. In PvP, we're actually kind of monstrous, to be honest. Both Assassination and Outlaw do a lot of damage, and the amount of CC you maintain with Subtlety alone to put players into constant stun locks, it's actually kind of hilarious. So honestly, if none of these other classes on the list convinced you, I think you guys might want to check out a rogue. It'd be perfect because on this exact same channel you can find a lot of the rogue guides, especially guides coming up for patch 8.1 in the near future. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Hopefully I gave you guys a few ideas of what you can level for patch 8.1. These are all the classes I'll be working on over time, and this week is definitely going to be one of those weeks where I want to spend as much time as I can on my alts and islands, trying to get as many of them caught up as possible. Then there's also all these different allied races that you can level with these brand new classes, and I'll be definitely doing that for my monk as a Makar. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Let me know what classes you're interested in patch 8.1 and if you're going to be leveling while the celebration for the 14th anniversary is available. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed and hopefully it gave you guys a few ideas of what you can level. Let me know if you guys have any tastes that coincide with mine in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see all of you in another video.